Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today I'm going to be giving you a good look around my dad's 1985 Mark III Escort. I've mentioned it a couple of times over the last 2 years that I've been making car videos, and you may have seen it in the background of a couple of the videos, but I've never actually formally introduced the car to you all. I'll also go over the future plans for the car. To give you a little bit of a hint, if you're in the market for a Mark III Escort, then you might want to watch this video very closely. Our chariot for the day is Winston, the plastic Fiesta. Quick pit stop to check up on how this cat litter's doing with this oil stain. Yeah, the stain's still there, but it's so much better. Much happier giving the garage back like this. Winston's thirsty. Unleaded is under £1 a litre for the first time in, what, 10 years? Winston doesn't get V-Power, he gets cheap supermarket fuel. Handbrake?
Nope.
Handbrake?
Nope.
Handbrake?
Nope.
Handbrake? Well, here she is, my dad's Mark III Escort. Very dusty, been neglected for the last couple of years, got dust sheets on it and goodness knows what. I don't think this car's got a battery in it, which means this is going to be fun getting it out of the garage. The handbrake's probably been left on, so the brakes might be seized, but we'll see how we go. Right, so this is my dad's Mark III Escort. I think he's owned it about 5 years, but it's basically been sitting in the garage for the last 2 years since my parents moved up to Northampton. Now, it's a 1985 and it's a 1600 CVH, but it's an automatic. And we'll talk more about the car and a few little modifications that we've done to it in a little while. But first, this car is in desperate need of a wash, so we're going to do that. Right, so we pushed the Mark III over here because Winston's now getting some love with the hose by Cat. So as I say, this is my dad's 1985 Mark III Escort 1600 Auto. I think it's a base model, it's not a gear or anything like that. And when my dad got this, it was showing 26,000 miles on the clock, which I believe is genuine, although I could tell that some bodywork had been done on the car in the past. Like you can see the front wing isn't perfectly lined up with the swage line on the door there. And some of the paint isn't that shiny, so it looks like it's had some poor paintwork in the past. But there were bits about it that made me believe that the mileage could be genuine, because it's actually quite solid underneath, and I'll show you that a bit later. I'll jack it up so you can have a look. Yeah, originally this car was actually supposed to be for my mum, and then it sort of just became my dad's other car instead. I thought it was a little bit too good to spend its life getting crashed into by shopping trolleys. So yeah, my dad just had it as his second car, just drove it every now and again. Never had that many problems with it really, obviously done a few maintenance jobs, but I'll go through everything that we've done on the car in a minute. Now, shortly after my dad got this car, before he had a garage to put it in, someone tried to steal it. When they went to break the steering lock, they actually damaged this seat. It's quite badly twisted up, although the seat cover's quite badly ripped on the driver's seat anyway. And yeah, they broke the steering lock, but that's now been replaced. When the attempt was made on stealing this car, my dad heard them outside basically breaking into the car, and he actually went down on his own. He was in his late 60s then. Even though my little brother was in the house at the time, my dad went down on his own. He told one of them to get out the passenger seat and he ran off, and then he went round to the driver's seat to tell that one to get out, and then they got out and swung a metal bar at him, which luckily my dad blocked with his arm, but then he broke his arm. But even that, he didn't even bother going to the hospital till the next day. He didn't even realise he'd broken his arm. So yeah, my dad's made of quite strong stuff. But yeah, they didn't manage to steal the car. The door was also bent out. I got my mate to bend that back in. You know, it could do with having a bit of a paint job here, but you know, it's not perfect, but it's better than it was. And as I say, the steering lock's now been replaced because this car is now running power steering. So all of that got replaced. The plastic that got broken off here hasn't been replaced yet though. Yeah, the power steering kit was fitted by Dave Sims Automotive in Weston-super-Mare, and my parents basically just went down to Weston-super-Mare for the weekend, and while they were there, Dave Sims fitted the power steering kit for him. Now, my dad's not really into modifying cars nowadays. You know, he was into sort of American cars when he was younger, but we went to the Ace Cafe in the car, and there was a 5-door one of these in a lighter blue, which was lowered, and it still had the original steel wheels on it. So then that made my dad think, yeah, he wants to lower the car. So I got a second-hand set of lowering springs. I think they also came from Dave Sims Automotive. So yeah, I fitted those. The rear seemed a little bit high compared to the front, so I just cut off like one coil from the rear springs, and yeah, it seemed to sit really nice. Shortly after that, my dad scrapped his Mark II Mondeo Gear X, and that's where these alloy wheels came from. And the steels that were fitted to this, they were 4.5-inch wide steelies, and they're the ones that I had banded to fit to Maud. So the rear ones are 8 inches wide, and the fronts are now 7.5 inches wide. But yeah, these are 16-inch alloys from a Mondeo Gear X. The wheels I was looking for this car were the 5-spoke 16-inch alloys from the Mondeo Gear, like the non-X ones, and they're also fitted to the SIs, and they look really good on these cars. And I knew that these wouldn't, or I thought these wouldn't look as good as those, but when we actually fitted them to the car, I actually think they look pretty cool. And, you know, not as many people try these wheels, whereas the other wheels are quite common to see on Mark III and 4 Escorts. Now, we did have to change the tyres to fit these wheels on here without it rubbing on full lock. Yeah, the tyre size is 195/45/16. Yeah, I've still got the original tyres up there, but I can't be bothered to get up there to see what size they are. But yeah, I think it was the profile that we had to go down a size on. But yeah, they fit all right. You could probably get away with a spacer on the rear. Quite a lot of room there. But yeah, it was the fronts that were fouling in a wing. Right, you'll notice there's red oxide on this rear arch. We dealt with some rust there, but I'll come to that in a little while because there was a bit of rust that I dealt with myself before that. Let's get the engine bay in the sun a bit. Right, that's a bit better. Quite a tidy engine bay for the age of the car. I'll talk about what's going on here with the blue stuff in a minute, but while we're on the subject of rust, anyone who knows anything about these cars will tell you they all rust in the battery tray, and this one was no different. Now, I welded this in myself, and I was able to get, it's like a repair panel, so it's got the battery tray, and then it has part of this panel as well, up to about here, all the way around. And basically, I was able to cut out the rust, and then just weld that in, and then I just used loads of filler around the edges, just so it looks original-ish. And then I basically painted it with some 2-pack spray cans. And before I did this job, this side inner wing was a lot worse than this side. So what I did basically, I took everything off of here. We had all this out, the fuse box was out as well. And while I was painting that, I basically painted the whole back of the engine bay and down here. And yeah, now this side looks a bit better than that side. Although the paint could do with a little polish, you know, it's only spray cans, but it looks a million times better than it did. And yeah, the battery tray's solid. Now, we've done general maintenance on this car, obviously, while my dad's owned it. You can see that that fuel pump is brand new. Obviously done things like the dizzy cap and the rotor arm or whatever. HT leads, decided to get them in blue, and I got my mate to paint a rocker cover in the same colour as the car. Probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it looks really cool. There's also a K&N air filter in there, just one that goes in the original airbox, just so it still looks original. And I'm pretty sure I did have to take the cam belt off for something once. Maybe it was a water pump gasket or something. And obviously, while it was all apart, gave this a nice clean up as well. So yeah, it's quite a tidy engine bay. You know, it's not a show car. My dad's not into all that, you know what I mean? It's just an old banger Ford Escort to him. But, you know, I just spent a little bit of time making it look a bit more presentable. And then I was obviously planning eventually to remove this and then just do a little bit of a tidy up job on this inner wing as well. Yeah, so coming back to this arch, now there was a sort of bubble of rust. I think it was roughly in the middle of the arch. You know, it wasn't breaking through that bad or anything, but we decided we was going to investigate, and I got my mate Nath to have a look at it. You know, the rust wasn't that bad, but because the inner bit had gone as well in a small area, it meant that it had to be cut out a bit more than it otherwise would have needed to be. Once we started digging into it, you could tell that this has had some filler in it at some point. You know, this panel doesn't look like it's got original paint on it anyway. So we didn't want to dig too far, you know, because at the end of the day, my dad's not interested in throwing thousands and thousands at it. We just wanted to deal with the rust that was visible and then just do a patch-up job. But as is always the case, things turned out a bit worse than we were expecting. And there was some other rust while it was on Nathan's ramp that I did start digging out. I think the rust that I was digging out was actually around this side. Nathan was going to weld that up next, but then circumstances changed. So yeah, none of that got done. And if I remember rightly, there's a little bit here, yeah, just going there. So, you know, I plan to sort of buy a seal repair section, but, you know, it doesn't need the whole seal put in. You know, I would have just used that bit to fix that and then use that bit to fix that. And then, you know, if there was any other holes anywhere, but I'll jack it up in a little while. But as far as I remember, it's pretty solid under there. There was a little bit on the inner seal while it was on Nath's ramp that I sort of cleaned up with a wire brush and then put some etch primer and some under seal on it, just a small thin area. You know, there was surface rust there, but it wasn't enough to start cutting it out. But it was worth me, you know, cleaning it up and putting something on it, I thought. But yeah, I'll be able to show you that when I jack it up as well. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, this car isn't auto. And me and my dad were toying with the idea of converting it to a manual. And at one point, the automatic gearbox, my dad said that it wasn't changing gear properly or something. I can't remember exactly what the symptoms were. But then we found a reconditioned automatic gearbox on eBay for about 125 quid, I think. You know, not a lot of money really for a fully refurbished gearbox. So we picked that up and I fitted that. And yeah, it's been sweet ever since. I've just remembered that one of my neighbours around here at the garage crashed into it once when I was around here. I got my mate to panel beat it, so it's like a million times better than it was, but yeah, it does really need a proper repair. I think other than that, that's pretty much the story of this Mark III Escort in terms of my dad's ownership of it. One thing I did forget to show you is this little model car that I had painted to match the car. Looks pretty cool sitting on the dash. Yeah, other than that, I think I'll jack the car up and show you what it looks like underneath. Winston's getting a full valet. Yeah, I don't know how well it shows on the camera, but it is really, really solid. One of the things that made me sort of believe the mileage is these original pinch welds, or whatever you'd call them. You know, even though the back part of the seal, you know, was rusty, you know, the fact that all this is original and, you know, it's solid. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, we did put a new fuel tank in this at one point as well, and exhaust system down to that joint there, and then the rest of it is the original stuff. That's why it's really rusty. Yeah, and it was the other side on the inside here where the inner seal is. That's where I sort of cleaned it back and then etch primered it and then put some under seal on it. I'll get a closer picture of that in a minute. But yeah, it's really solid. That's why it's weird that, you know, things like the wings have obviously been replaced and not done very well, and the fact that a lot of the paint isn't original and not very shiny. Look, you know, the lower part of the car there. And it's weird that it's had all this bodywork on it, but when you look underneath, it does seem that the mileage is genuine. I'll just jack up the other side the same. Yeah, so here's the other side, all solid. A little bit of surface rust there. This is where I sort of cleaned it up because it had surface rust. Cleaned it back like to bare metal as best I could with wire brushes, and then etch primered it and then put an under sealer on with a brush, just caked it on. Now, there's no holes behind there or anything, you know, didn't need cutting out, but it was a bit rusty, just surface rust. So yeah, you remember earlier on I mentioned that I started digging out this driver's side rear arch because that was the next bit I was going to get Nath to tackle, but then that didn't happen, and I'd obviously started cleaning along here to see how bad it was. If I remember rightly, this area is all quite pitted, but as I mentioned earlier, the plan was to buy a whole seal and then just use however much of it as I need. And then inside there is a little bit of surface rust there, like there is a hole. That was an area that needed attention. And then on the rear of that arch, it's a similar story. I don't know if that would turn into a hole or not. The inner lip's definitely gone there, but yeah, it's a bit rusty there as well. Spare wheel well, solid, but quite a bit of surface rust. You know, like on the rear valance here, my plan was just to clean all this up. Just spray it. Same with all this. Clean it up and under seal it or something. Have a look under the front. Yeah, this anti-roll bar bracket, whatever piece this is, you know, and all round here. A lot of surface rust, but no holes And there's a view of the floor from the front of the car. I don't know how much the camera's picking it up, but... So yeah, overall, a pretty solid 3-door Mark III Escort. You know, not perfect, but not rotten like most of them are. Yeah, the mileage is now showing 30,036 miles. And like all the dash is in pretty good nick. The rear seat cover's also ripped. Needs a good hoover out and a clean out, but... Right, so that is my dad's 1985 Mark III Escort 1600 Auto. Do let me know what you reckon in the comments. Have I completely ruined it by dropping the suspension slightly and fitting those Mondeo wheels? What do you think of the colour-coded rocker cover? Yeah, let me know what you think. Tell me what you would do if you owned this car. What modifications would you do to it? And if you are in the market for a Mark III Escort, keep watching. Before I end this video, I need to tell you about the future plans for my dad's Mark III. Well, he's found that he hasn't really been missing it while it's been in the garage for the last 2 years, so he's decided to sell it. I'm going to be sticking it on eBay because I feel that that's the best way to get the best price for my dad and the new owner, and I'm going to be overly honest about all the rust and stuff on the car, and we'll just see what it goes for. I will be putting a reserve on it because I won't be giving the car away. If it's going to be going for silly money, then I'll just take it on myself. So do let me know what you think of my dad's Mark III. If there's anything I missed out, put any questions in the comments and I'll get back to you. But other than that, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new and you want to keep up to date with all my other videos. And check the links in the description for my social media and my email address. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.